Hey everyone, this is Ali Advekili. I'm an attorney with Foley and Lardner, and I'm also here with my colleague Shavi Khan, who's an IP partner in our Boston office. Welcome to Startup Advisors. We are going to be taking on a number of issues that come up on a regular basis with startups, and we hope to provide some information that may be insightful.
Great, Alida. Thanks for the introduction and pleasure to be on this webinar or video call with you. So, talking about co-founders, I know you mentioned this earlier too. It starts to get tricky once you've got a co-founder in the mix because oftentimes there's a discussion about how much equity each co-founder should get and what is considered fair. How do you assess or how do you advise your clients on deciding what the equity split should be between co-founders if there are two or maybe even more than two?
There's no bright line on that. It's really a discussion that usually the attorney will have with the founders, and it's really to give the founders some thoughts around having the discussion amongst themselves to understand who's contributing what to this enterprise, this venture. Is one person contributing most or all of the capital? Is one person contributing all of the technology? Is someone else contributing some other aspect? Maybe it's the network, or maybe it's the business or finance background. Whatever the contributions are, there needs to be an honest discussion about who's going to put what into the company, and also what are some of the work ethic, responsibilities, obligations. How much is each person going to be contributing, so that you've got sort of a fair level playing field as far as what everyone's bringing to the table. Once you've had that discussion, then you can kind of figure out, if one person's putting in more than another person, then it's more likely than not that they should get more of the equity. So as an example, if you've got one person that's going to be contributing maybe 100% of the capital initially, and they've also got some contacts and networks in the community, and the other person is contributing just the technology, which is important, but it's going to have to be improved and worked on. So there's a little bit of a disparity there where one person's putting in all the capital, a lot of contacts, and the other person is putting in some initial technology. In that case, you may allocate a little unequally, where the person putting in the finances and the contacts may get a larger share. That discussion just needs to happen. I mean, I can't tell exactly what percentage that should be. I can give some guiding principles, but ultimately they need to sit down and come to some discussion on that and some agreement.
I've had some clients spend a lot of time and energy trying to fine tune what those percentages are, and oftentimes they miss the bigger picture where you just have to like your co-founder and be willing to trust the relationship. Uh, any advice on how they should try to go about that and how much energy they need to spend on this?
That's an excellent question, and it is very important, because as you can imagine, as the founders get into a relationship together to build this company, there might be all sorts of circumstances that come up. One person gets tired and wants to leave after a few months. Another person doesn't want to contribute as many hours as they were initially, or some life event happens. So how do you govern all of that? Well, there are ways and mechanisms, and oftentimes attorneys will help counsel and advise founders. In some cases, it's recommending putting in place a shareholders agreement. So you have essentially an agreement that will govern or dictate how things will work if certain events or circumstances come up. So, for example, a founder is getting divorced, or a founder, has a disability, or decides that they want to leave after a few months. How is the company going to manage that process? And if you've got everything in an agreement and it's all spelled out and discussed and agreed upon, it oftentimes takes away a little bit of the unknown. It also can help mitigate potential disputes, because now you've got a process for how to handle a number of circumstances that might arise.
So that brings up an interesting discussion, and I might want to pivot to the concept of vesting. We get to hear that a lot where uh, even if co-founders agree to split, let's say 50-50, uh, the concept of vesting still needs to come into play. And investors may require something differently than what the co-founders have sort of decided amongst themselves. Can you just explain to the audience what vesting is, what the typical vesting structure might look like, and why it's important?
Sure, vesting is very important, and it's something that definitely founders should be thinking about, not only for themselves, but for employees and consultants they're working with that are going to be getting any equity in the company. So essentially, the concept of vesting is a way to incentivize people to stay involved with the company over a period of time. You don't want someone to get a piece of the company and then within a short period of time walk away, take that piece with them, and the company now has a piece that's been basically taken away, and that person is not participating or continuing to help with the growth of the company. So if you're going to give equity to someone, whether it's stock or whether it's options, you can put vesting in place so that for stock, if they were to leave within a certain period of time, the company would have the right to repurchase the stock that hasn't vested yet. So the vesting concept with stock, it works as it lapses over time, that the right to repurchase that stock will lapse over a period of time. And generally speaking, it's over 4 years with a 1 year cliff, which means the person has to work for an entire year to vest in 25% of the stock. And then the remaining stock typically vests over the remaining 3 years on a monthly basis. So as an example, two founders, one founder gets 20%, the other is getting 80%. After a few months, founder A with the 20% decides they want to walk away. They're not interested in participating anymore with the venture. Within the first couple of months, nothing's vested. They walk away. The company can repurchase all of the stock that they got, essentially at the same price that the founder paid for it, which is usually a pretty nominal amount. So it makes it easy for the company to be able to take back those shares that haven't vested yet. And the founder can walk away, but they don't get to take the equity with them. In the scenario with options, it works a little bit differently because the option is you're not getting stock on day one, you're getting the right to purchase stock at a future date. And that future date is dictated by when those options vest. So as a person works, once they complete the first year, the cliff, they'll get the ability to exercise up to 25% of the number of shares that have actually vested, because 25% will vest after the completion of 1 year. So when they hit that mark, then they can exercise and purchase 25%. But with regard to the remaining, if they left after the first year, the remaining 75% of the option shares would basically evaporate. They would expire and they wouldn't have vested. So the person walking away after the first year would not be able to exercise that remaining 75% of the options that they received.